This is bad mic technique and you can hear it. But if I press this button, the audio turns into something much better than it should be when I am this far away. So what is it and how am I doing this? You're hearing the Wave XLR, a single input audio interface from Elgato. It's actually been available since 2021. And even though it's a high quality audio interface, you can see it is running my SM7B. So any microphone that you plug into it is going to work really well. You can drive it cleanly. There's plenty of gain. That wasn't enough to catch my attention. It wasn't until just last month when they released something that I absolutely have been waiting for when it comes to digital signal processing, and that is called Voice Focus. So when it comes to digital signal processing effects, DSP, we already have several devices, including interfaces and USB microphones that give us things like compression, de-essing, noise gates, filtering, and even noise removal, which is something I've been excited about up until this point because it's being done really well, transparently. That is removing noise without it affecting the quality, the tone of your voice. And with those other effects besides noise removal, that is something I've been doing for years via hardware, but noise removal is one of those processes that tends to be a post-processing effect that you're not doing in real time. We have noise gates, but noise gates are different than noise removal. Whereas a noise gate only holds out the noise in the sections of the audio where you are not talking into the microphone, like that. Noise removal uses algorithms to measure the noise floor of a space and then remove it. So having that in a DSP effect has been really helpful for the average content creator, someone like you and I, who are creating audio and video inside of a home studio. Places that are not necessarily treated to hold sound out and oftentimes have things running like air conditioning or computer fans that create the type of noise that noise removal is getting really good at removing. But it's the other thing that it can do that I've really been waiting for, and that is reverb removal or reduction. So right now, Voice Focus is on, and the three main things that Voice Focus does is that noise removal, what they call isolation, which I think is isolating the mic from noises like hitting the desk or touching the mic arm. It's doing a good job of reducing those things, keeping them at bay from creating problems in your audio, which I will demonstrate. And the final big thing, reverb reduction. This is why I reached out to B&H to finally send me the Elgato Wave XLR, because I could take any of my XLR microphones, plug it into this, and be able to use Voice Focus, because it's a combination of the device, so a Wave USB microphone or a Wave XLR, and then with their included software, Wavelink, you get this DSP effect called Voice Focus. So let's check out the three main features of Voice Focus and see how well it's doing. I mentioned noise reduction. There's a little bit of a ground floor in here, but let's crank up the noise. I'm going to turn on the heater. All right, it could be helpful to wear some headphones to hear all of these samples really well, but I've got the heater cranked up right next to me, and you're hearing that go into the microphone with no reduction yet. But let's go ahead and enable Voice Focus. And there we go. Ground floor is completely clean. You can see I'm running Voice Focus here at about 50%, and it's doing a great job. There's something really cool about that slider, I'll tell you in a minute. All right, let's move to the next thing. I'm going to shut off the heater, and then I'll bring all of the three problems back in at once, and we'll test that as well. Voice Focus is back off. Now let's look at the isolation. Typically when you're recording, especially if you're doing live stream, which is kind of where I think this has the most value right now for live streamers, podcasters who are recording, maybe you're on an interview, anything where you're recording audio where you cannot post-process it later, Voice Focus can be a huge help. So if you're doing that, you may be typing on a keyboard. You can hear that. And sometimes if you type really hard, it can hit the desk and go into the microphone, usually through the boom arm. Now, this boom arm is actually detached from the desk. So if I was to tap the table where the boom arm is, you can hear that. Other times you may reach to adjust your microphone. Now the SM7B is internally shock mounted, so it does a pretty good job. But if I was gonna turn the knobs to tighten it up, which happens a lot, grab the boom arm or just move it around, you're hearing all that noise. But let's enable voice focus and see how it does on just this part before we add in all the problems again. So voice focus enabled. All right, and the keyboard, I'm going to tap really hard so you can hear the keys through the voice focus. And then I'm going to do what would be more like normal typing. All right, that's pretty good. It's not transferring through the desk, although again, this mic arm is detached, but the keys are being reduced. Now for handling the mic, pretty good. Do that again without voice focus. Let's tap the microphone boom arm as if we hit it while we were moving our hands. The microphone, the arm. Let's put on voice focus. You can still hear a few taps come through, but if you were to accidentally hit the microphone arm, it would probably stop that. And then again, tapping the table that the microphone's actually connected to. So if your mic stand is on the floor, you might be tapping your foot. That's going to probably get into the audio. If it's on your desk, either the typing or just some people talk with their hands and they hit the table, that's going to get in and that would sound like that. Or if you just hit the desk, right? So let's tap the table where the mic is on, turn on voice focus. That's pretty good. So voice focus is doing a great job at reducing noise. It's doing a good job at isolating the microphone from taps and things on the desk. But the biggest one of them all for me, the whole reason I'm doing this is for reverb reduction, because I haven't really seen that done before. Now, it has been done before, and I'll mention that at the end here when we wrap up, when I have a couple final thoughts. But this room, you can see I have some DIY acoustic panels, and those are all through the room. I record in here all the time. So it is treated for reverb reduction. So it's hard for me to recreate reverb, but that bad mic technique in the open, that's about as much as I can do to create bad reverb. So let's check that out. Let me gain up a little bit here on the microphone. Obviously the noise floor has been raised, but now you can hear, since I'm much further from the microphone, which is what reverb sounds like. It sounds like you are more distant from the microphone, and those early reflections off of the wall come back into the microphone along with your voice, and it sounds empty and hollow. So this is about the most reverb I can create in this room. Voice focus is off. Let's go ahead and enable it. All right, now voice focus is on. It sounds like I have come back to the microphone much closer, the way it would sound if you had good mic technique. And so this is the most reverb I can create in this room, but you can hear it's doing a pretty good job of reducing that. I turned it off. You can hear more of the reflections in the room as the reflections of my voice come back to the microphone. Some people call it echo. It's not echo, but that echoey sound, that open, far away, thin, weak sound with more of my voice than I would want than if I was nice and close to the microphone. So here we are again. Voice focus is off. Let me just read what voice focus says that it does, and then I'll reread it with voice focus on. So voice focus brings speech to the forefront, pure, clean, free of noise. Let's turn it on. The voice focus brings speech to the forefront, pure, clean, free of noise. And so I'm going to get back here, reduce the gain back down to where I had it, which is about 57 dB. And let's actually increase this from 50% to 100%. And you don't hear a lot of change when I do that. Normally, if you change a slider from 50 to 100 or whatever, it's going to affect the amount of processing it does. But voice focus does something very cool. If I back up, and now you're hearing more of the room, but voice focus is keeping the reverb down, it's actually working harder to a maximum of 100% where I put the slider. I'm going to come back. All right, so I come back and it's probably processing at more like 50, 10, because this space is well treated. So what you're actually doing with that slider is setting a maximum value. Voice focus knows how much you actually need, and you say, do not process this past 50%, past 100. So it's not using 100. I can bring this down to like 30%, and it doesn't sound much different because it's already working at what it needs and nothing more, not the 100% that I had it set. So in this space, I could say no more than a maximum of 50%, and it's going to sound fantastic. And that's what we're going to run at for the rest of this video, and it'll adjust up to 50%. But if it doesn't need that much, it won't use it. So that's very cool. It only uses what it needs, and it stops at a maximum of what you set it. So this is part of the AI enhancements that it's doing with the AI acoustics collaboration that Elgato is doing. And when I say AI, you usually think that's going out to the cloud. This is all in the software. So it's a preloaded, pre-taught AI that then knows how to do this based on all the samples it's learned off of. So you do not have to be connected to the internet, to the cloud, or anything to use the AI. It's going through the CPU of your device, either the USB microphone or the Wave XLR in this case, and then the software is using the built-in AI model to process all of these effects via Voice Focus. And I'll say that Wavelink also has so many other post-processing effects. It's very cool, and some of the cleanest plugins I've seen. And you can see they really do focus on gamers because it feels like buying skins for your audio interface or for your USB microphone, because they have a whole store of cool plugins that you can add into this device. I'm not going to cover all that here, but it's really cool. So the reverb reduction, the noise removal, that's typically stuff that's done in post-production. You can now have that in live. And I've realized as I've been using this over the last month that this is actually something that is very cool and could be helpful, but you really should treat your space, because if you were in the same place recording over and over again, what you really want to do is make that recording environment the best possible. You don't want to rely on plugins to do that. But if you are in a place where you cannot treat it, or maybe you are mobile, you're on the road every once in a while, you're in a hotel that's not treated, this can be really helpful. But again, treat your space as best possible, and then that even makes this stuff work that much better. That's really my goal, to record the best sounding audio, best looking video, and then you can just tweak it in post to make it actually really good professional level. And these tools are helping us get there in non-traditional recording environments, what we are doing in our home studios that are not $1 million studios. They're not built for recording, but we do our best possible. And then these plugins help us get it to that professional level. But in terms of this real-time processing, this reverb removal or reduction is really kind of the first that I've seen that works well. There are some post-production tools and plugins that I use that can do this. None of them have been overwhelmingly impressive, but they are getting better all the time. This is the first one I've really seen or used in real time that is working really well. There is the Nvidia Broadcast, so they have done this. They have a reverb removal tool. My problem with that is that it's Windows-based only, and it requires you to have a specific graphics card. So it's very limiting. This opens it up to almost anyone. You can buy the Wave XLR and plug in any XLR microphone that you have, and then you can use it on Mac or Windows, and you get the benefit of this processing through Voice Focus. But one last time, let's create all the problems that we can. I'm going to turn Voice Focus off. We're going to turn the heater back on. All right, you can hear that. It's nasty. Let's back up. I'm going to try to create as much reverb as possible, and I'm still going to try to get the mic pointed at me in the right direction. The heater is gone, and I am much more present. Less of the room. It sounds like I'm closer to the microphone. So pretty good job for Voice Focus, and I'm only doing a maximum of 50%. And it's using what it needs, and it needs a lot of processing right now. Actually, let's crank that up to 100. So that's 100%. I think it sounds even quieter, and the reverb reduction is still working. Again, I'll read what Voice Focus is so you can hear it on and off. Voice Focus off. Voice Focus brings speech to the forefront, pure, clean, free of noise. Voice Focus brings speech to the forefront, pure, clean, free of noise. That is Voice Focus via the Wave XLR and Wavelink software from Elgato. Thanks to B&H for sending this out. If you have any questions, I'm sure you do, ask them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.